Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring a perspective on the Vietnam War that you might not have heard before.
Oh, yeah, definitely a unique one.
We're diving into Kristin Hannah's novel, The Women,
It's a good one.
to uncover stories of courage and resilience that often get overshadowed in typical war narratives.
Yeah, it's so true how history tends to focus on the big battles and the men on the front lines.
Right.
But the women pulls back the curtain on another side of the conflict,
Yeah.
showing us how the war impacted women who served, like Fran McGrath,
Oh, okay.
a nurse who volunteered to go to Vietnam.
So we're talking about the 1960s, right?
Mm-hmm.
A time when the idea of women in combat zones was still pretty radical.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
What kind of challenges did Fran face just by making that decision to serve?
Well, first imagine the societal pressures of that era.
Oh, yeah.
Women were expected to be wives, mothers, homemakers,
Right.
not tending to wounded soldiers in a war zone.
Wow.
Hannah really captures the resistance Fran faced from her family.
Oh, wow.
And the judgment from society at large, it was like she was defying the very definition of what a woman should be.
So not only is she dealing with the dangers of a war zone, but she's also battling these deeply ingrained social expectations. It's like she's fighting on two fronts even before she sets foot in Vietnam.
Exactly. And once she's there, she encounters another layer of challenges, the reality of war itself.
Uh-huh.
The novel doesn't shy away from the horrors Fran witnesses in the field hospitals.
Right.
The devastating injuries, the constant loss of life.
Wow.
It's a stark reminder of the brutal toll that war takes, not just physically, but emotionally as well.
Yeah, I was really struck by how Hannah doesn't just skim over the emotional impact. She really delves into the psychological wounds that so many veterans carry. The invisible scars.
Oh, absolutely.
Things like post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD.
PTSD was rarely talked about back then, especially for women.
Right.
Imagine constantly reliving those horrific experiences, even after coming home feeling on edge, unable to sleep, haunted by memories.
Yeah.
That was Fran's reality. And it's a reality for many veterans, even today.
That's got to be just absolutely isolating.
Totally.
But amidst all the darkness, there's also this incredible thread of strength that runs through the novel.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Fran's strength doesn't just come from enduring hardship. It comes from her defiant spirit, her constant choice to push back against limitations, whether it's those imposed by society or the circumstances of war itself.
Can you give us an example of that? I mean, how does that defiance actually play out in her experiences?
Well, take her decision to enlist.
Okay.
It wasn't just about patriotism. It was about taking control of her own destiny,
Right.
proving that she wasn't bound by the narrow roles that society tried to dictate for her.
Uh-huh.
And then in Vietnam, it's her determination to do her job to save lives, to be a source of comfort in the midst of chaos.
Yeah.
Even when faced with unimaginable horrors, she refuses to be broken.
That's powerful. It's like she's saying, I'm not going to let war or society define who I am. I'm going to define myself.
Exactly. And that defiance isn't just about individual strength. It's also about the power of female bonds.
Okay.
Hannah really highlights the importance of friendships between women, especially in the context of war. The relationships Fran forges with her fellow nurses become her lifeline,
Yeah.
her source of support and solace in a world that often feels hostile and uncaring.
Oh, I loved that part of the book. It was so inspiring to see these women coming together, finding strength in each other, creating their own sense of community in the midst of chaos.
Right. And it wasn't just about sharing the burdens of war.
Yeah.
These friendships were also about challenging the societal norms that tried to isolate them in their shared experiences. They found validation, understanding, and a sense of belonging that the outside world often denied them.
So it's like even in the most extreme circumstances, that those human connections, those bonds of friendship and support can become a source of incredible resilience. It really makes you think about the power of community, especially for those who've experienced trauma.
Absolutely. And it raises an interesting question. If these women could find such profound support within the chaos of war, why was that same level of understanding and acceptance lacking back home?
That's such a good point. It's like they were fighting a battle on two fronts, the war itself and then this unspoken war against societal expectations and the stigma surrounding mental health, especially for women.
Exactly. And that's where the novel really pushes us to think about the broader implications of these individual experiences.
Okay, so we've talked about Fran's challenges, her defiance, and the power of female friendships. What else can we glean from the women in terms of understanding the Vietnam War and its impact?
Well, one thing that really struck me was how Hannah portrays the complexities of healing from trauma. It's
Yeah.
not a linear process, and it's
Yeah.
certainly not easy.
Right.
Fran struggles with memories, with guilt, with the feeling of being disconnected from the world she once knew.
Yeah, that part really resonated with me. It wasn't like she just flipped a switch and was okay. After coming home, Hannah shows us the messy parts, the setbacks, the moments of despair. It felt so real, so raw.
Right. And that rawness is important because it underscores the reality that healing takes time, it takes effort, and it often requires support from others.
Yeah.
And even then, there are scars that may never fully fade.
It makes you realize that the war doesn't truly end when the soldiers come home. There's a whole other battle being fought. The battle for healing, for reintegration, for finding a place in a world that may not fully understand what they've been through.
That's a powerful insight, and it speaks to the importance of recognizing and addressing the needs of veterans, not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically as well.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but I feel like we're just scratching the surface. There's so much more unpack in the women. What are some of the key takeaways that you think listeners should keep in mind as we continue this deep dive?
Well, I think the most important takeaway is that there are always multiple sides to every story.
Right.
The women challenges us to look beyond the dominant narrative, to seek out those voices that have been marginalized or silenced.
Wow. It's like we've been looking at a puzzle with some pieces missing. And this book helps us fill in those gaps, giving us a more complete and nuanced understanding of the Vietnam War and its impact.
Exactly. And by focusing on the experiences of women like Fran, we gain insights into not just the war itself, but also the social and cultural context of the time.
Okay.
We see how deeply ingrained gender roles and expectations shaped their experiences both during and after the war.
And that's something that's still relevant today, right? We're still grappling with issues of gender equality, the stigma surrounding mental health, and the challenges faced by veterans.
Absolutely. The Women offers a powerful lens through which to examine these ongoing conversations. It reminds us that history isn't just a collection of dates and facts.
Okay.
It's a tapestry woven from the lives of real people.
Yeah.
And their stories have the power to illuminate the present as much as they reflect the past.
I love that analogy, and it makes me wonder what other stories are out there hidden in the shadows of history, waiting to be brought to light. What other perspectives can help us understand the world in a deeper, more meaningful way?
That's a question worth pondering, and I think The Women gives us a great starting point.
Yeah.
It shows us the power of looking beyond the surface, of seeking out those untold stories that can challenge our assumptions and enrich our understanding of the world.
Well said. So let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll delve even deeper into the themes of resilience and recovery in the women. We'll explore how Fran navigates the challenges of coming home, rebuilding her life, and ultimately finding a path towards healing. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about Fran's incredible resilience and the challenges she faces upon returning home after serving in Vietnam.
Right.
It really makes you think,
It does.
how do you even begin to process such a profound experience
Yeah.
and re-enter a world that feels so different from the one you left behind? Well, that's the heart of Fran's journey in the second half of The Women. She comes back to a society that doesn't quite know what to do with women veterans.
Right.
There's this expectation that they should just slip back into their pre-war roles.
Right, like go back to being housewives.
Exactly.
But for Fran, that's simply not possible.
No, not at all. Hannah portrays this beautifully through Fran's struggles with PTSD. She has nightmares, flashbacks. She's constantly on edge.
Right.
There's a sense of disconnect, like she's living in two worlds at once.
Wow.
The world of war that haunts her memories and the world she's trying to re-enter.
I remember that one passage where Fran talks about feeling like a ghost, invisible to those around her.
Oh, yeah.
It was so poignant. It really captured that sense of isolation that many veterans experience.
Yes, and that isolation is compounded by the fact that mental health was such a taboo subject back then.
Right.
Especially for women, there was this expectation that they should be strong, stoic, able to cope without complaint. So not only is Fran dealing with the trauma of war, she's also grappling with the pressure to hide her struggles, to pretend that everything is fine.
So she's dealing with so much more than just coming home from war.
Exactly.
It's heartbreaking to think about the added burden that silence must have imposed. But amidst all of that, there's this glimmer of hope. It comes from the relationships Fran builds with other women who understand what she's going through.
Absolutely. And that's where the theme of sisterhood takes on even greater significance.
Okay.
In the latter part of the novel,
Yeah.
Remember how we talked about the importance of those bonds between the nurses during the war?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Well, those connections become even more crucial
Okay.
as they navigate the challenges of coming home.
It's like they formed this unspoken pact.
Yes.
They've been through hell together, and now they're going to help each other through whatever comes next.
Yeah. Exactly. They create their own support system, a space where they can be vulnerable, where they can share their struggles without fear of judgment.
Mm.
It's in those relationships that Fran finds the strength to confront her demons and begin the long, arduous process of healing.
Yeah, it's a long process.
It is.
And it's not just about talking and sharing their experiences, right?
Right.
They actually take action to help each other rebuild their lives.
Yeah.
I loved that part where they decide to start a business together.
Oh, it's great.
It's like they're taking control of their own destinies, creating something positive out of the ashes of war.
That's such a powerful symbol of their resilience.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just waiting for things to get better. They're actively shaping their own futures.
Yeah.
And in doing so, they're not only healing themselves,
Right.
they're also challenging societal expectations of what women are capable of.
Right. It's like they're saying, we're not broken, we're not defined by what we've been through, and we're going to create a life that's meaningful and fulfilling on our own terms.
And that message of defiance, of taking ownership of one's own narrative, that's something that resonates deeply with readers. It's a testament to the enduring human spirit,
Yeah.
the capacity for growth and transformation, even in the face of profound adversity.
It makes you think, what can we learn from these women?
Right.
From their strength, their resilience, their unwavering support for each other.
Well, I think one of the biggest lessons is the importance of creating spaces for healing and connection, especially for those who've experienced trauma,
Okay.
whether it's veterans, survivors of abuse, or anyone who's gone through something difficult.
Yeah.
You know, we need to foster environments where people feel safe to share their stories, to seek support,
Right.
and to connect with others who understand.
Absolutely. And it's not just about providing professional help, although that's certainly important.
Right.
It's also about fostering a sense of community, of belonging, of knowing that you're not alone in your struggles.
Exactly. We all need those connections. Those people, we can lean on those who can offer a listening ear, a shoulder to cry on, or just a shared laugh when we need it most. And that's a message that transcends the specific context of the Vietnam War. It's a universal human need.
So The Women isn't just a war story or a story about women's experiences. It's a story about the power of the human spirit to overcome adversity, about the healing power of connection, and about the importance of creating a world where everyone feels seen, heard, and supported.
Beautifully put. And I think that's what makes this novel so powerful and enduring. It speaks to something deep within us, something that transcends time and circumstance, something that reminds us of our shared humanity and our capacity for resilience, even in the darkest of times.
It's inspiring, thought-provoking, and ultimately it leaves you feeling hopeful about the possibility of healing and growth, even in the face of immense pain and suffering.
Exactly. And that's a message we could all use a little more of in today's world.
You know, it's amazing how The Women manages to be both heartbreaking and hopeful. At the same time, we've talked about the trauma of war, the challenges of reintegration.
It's a lot.
But ultimately, Fran's story and the stories of the women around her
Right.
are about resilience,
Yeah.
about finding a way to rebuild and reclaim your life.
It's not about forgetting or erasing the past.
Right.
It's about integrating it into who you are,
Right.
about finding a way to move forward without letting those experiences define you.
And I think that's a really powerful message for anyone who's gone through something difficult,
Yeah.
whether it's war, loss, trauma, any kind of life-altering event.
For sure.
There's this idea that healing means going back to who you were before, but sometimes it's about becoming someone new,
Right.
someone stronger,
Yeah.
someone who's been shaped by their experiences but not broken by them.
Exactly. And that's where the novel's exploration of female friendships really shines.
Yeah.
It's through those connections, that sense of shared experience and mutual support, that Fran and the other women find the strength to move forward.
It's like they create this circle of healing,
Totally.
a safe space where they can be vulnerable, where they can process their pain,
Right.
and where they can ultimately find a way to reclaim their joy and their purpose.
And that sense of purpose is so important. One of the things that struck me about the women is how Hannah emphasizes the importance of finding something to believe in, something to fight for, even after the war is over.
Yes, like they've channeled that fighting spirit, that determination that helped them survive the war into creating a new life, a life that's filled with meaning and purpose, and that's not always easy.
No.
It takes work, it takes courage, but it's ultimately what allows them to thrive.
And that's the beauty of this novel. It doesn't offer easy answers or quick fixes.
Right.
It shows us the messy, complicated, and often painful process of healing. But it also reminds us that it's possible. It reminds us that even in the darkest of times, there's always a glimmer of hope, a spark of resilience that can guide us towards a brighter future.
I think that's a perfect way to sum up the essence of The Women. It's a story that challenges us, moves us, and ultimately inspires us to believe in the power of the human spirit to overcome adversity.
And it leaves us with a sense of responsibility, a call to action, to
Mhm.
create a world where everyone has access to the support and resources they need to heal and thrive.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into The Women, I want to leave you with this thought. What stories are we not hearing? Whose voices are being silenced? And what can we do to amplify those voices to ensure that all experiences are acknowledged, valued, and honored?
That's a powerful question, and it's one that we should all be asking ourselves, not just in the context of war or historical events, but in our everyday lives. We all have a role to play in creating a more inclusive and compassionate world, a world where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued.
I think that's the perfect note to end on.